77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts, including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Entertaining and informative
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the New York State Republican Party, as well as being the County Chair of the Suffolk County Party. With us is our good friend, esteemed attorney, commentator, essayist, our wonderful co-host, Eric Levine. So, gentlemen, the curse of living in interesting times. Let's begin the interesting time by talking about Iran, what's going on there. A lot of stories, a lot of confusion, a lot of backbiting, a lot of games. So let's try to sort it out.
I just want to say, whatever it is we talk about now, 1 hour after we get off the air, something's going to happen that vindicates what we said on the show. It's happened the last 2 weeks.
That's right. As Chairman Garcia and Eric Levine, Esquire, have pointed out, we have a perfect track record of getting it right.
There you go.
If we only pick stocks that way, we'd be in great shape. I guess you have to be Nancy Pelosi's husband to be that good a stock picker. So, Iran was attacked by U.S. They used the bunker-busting bombs. They used a dozen or 14 of them.
The MOPs, the MOP.
Right. They did 12 to 14 of them, knocked out the big site. So the big question becomes, what did they really accomplish? And there are mixed reports, and there's a lot of backbiting going on. And then you have the Ayatollah out there saying he's defeated Israel and he's brought the United States and Israel to their knees because he showed Israel and the United States who was in charge. You'd never know that they had their behinds kicked in.
Did he do this from the bunker that he was hiding in?
That's exactly.
I just want to make sure I knew where he was making the statement from.
From the bunker.
Yeah, he was a big hero with other people's lives.
Where
like a lot of these people.
Where
are.
nobody could find him as
Right.
they were trying to get orders.
Right.
I just want to make sure we're talking about the same Ayatollah.
He had the same soup can communication as Chairman Jesse Garcia has talked about. So this is the problem, and this is my fear. I think Trump did the right thing. I think he set back the program. I don't know how much time they've set it back for. I don't know how complete the job was. There's stories that there are over 400 ishkabibbles worth of this stuff that's moved out because they anticipated an attack. There is places that's supposed to be fortifications that they've moved it. They have one place they call a fortress where they may have moved the materials, the nuclear materials. Trump is taking a victory lap. You have to be very careful about taking victory laps because events kind of unwind and show you are bragging too soon. He's saying the war is over. I respectfully submit, Mr. President, this is a war that will never be over as long as the Ayatollahs and the mullahs control Iran. It can't be over because they are dedicated to the destruction of Israel, the destruction of the United States, destruction of Western civilization. Their goal is to create a so-called paradise on earth governed by Sharia law, and anyone who disagrees with that has their head on the line, the chopping block, will be thrown off a building, will be disappeared, will be put into internment camps. These are not people you can trust. These are not people you can ever believe will do the right thing. These are people who are absolutely committed to a never-ending war as long as they're in power. Eric.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of the Ayatollah's claims that they won the war, I mean, I'm a big Monty Python fan, and one of the great movies of all time is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And there's this wonderful scene when King Arthur comes upon the Black Knight who's trying to prevent him from passing wherever he was going to. And at the end of the scene, the Black Knight has had both his arms cut off and both his legs cut off. And he says and he's still trying to stop King Arthur. And King Arthur turns to him, what are you going to do, bleed on me? Iran is the Black Knight. They have lost. And not only have they lost, they have been utterly humiliated. The Israelis completely controlled the skies over Iran. Iran was incapable of stopping any Israeli attack. The Americans flew in with the B-2s. We flew in. Not a single Iranian plane got off the ground. Not a single shot was fired. They got in, they did their jobs, and they came back. God bless our military. What an incredible achievement. Flying 34 hours, nonstop, refueling in the air continuously, and then dropping these bombs with precision, within feet of one another, within feet of their targets. Only the United States could have achieved that. Donald Trump did absolutely the right thing. He had the legal authority to do it, and it has accomplished a tremendous amount beyond ending the Iranian nuclear program. Just to digress for a second, Richard, to your point about whether or not they've moved some enriched uranium into another site, it's almost irrelevant. One of the things that the JCPOA, or Obama's nuclear deal, one of the obscenities of that deal was that the United States would take on itself the obligation, the burden of preventing Israel from attacking Iran. The United States was actually the protector of the Iran nuclear program. The Israelis will never make that mistake again. If they ever see the Iranians attempting to reconstitute their nuclear program or their ballistic missile program, they will do to the Iranians what they have done to Hezbollah in Lebanon. They will continue to attack. They will not allow them to rebuild.
But the question becomes, how will they know? Are they that good to know?
Well, one thing we have learned from this war, Israeli intelligence in Iran is unbelievable. It is at the absolute highest levels of the Iranian government. There's no question they've penetrated the IRGC. There's no question they've penetrated the Ayatollahs in a circle. Their intelligence is incredible. Remember, the Israelis have a whole bunch of things going for them, but two of them are there are a lot of Iranian expats who left after they were thrown out, after the Shah fell, and they left, but still have family there. And then there are other ace in the hole is a country called Azerbaijan. Roughly 30% of the Iranian population is Azari. They're culturally Azerbaijanis. And Azerbaijan, which is a Shiite country, has diplomatic relations with Israel, has normalized relations with Israel, and hates Iran because it's very secular, and they're very afraid of Iranian Sharia law and the political Islam. They're very concerned about that, so they're at each other's necks. But there's a lot of intelligence that flows to the Israelis through the Azaris to the Azerbaijanis back to Israel. But the Israelis, they have their spy satellites, they have their spies on the ground, they have a lot of human intelligence, they understand the culture. Yeah, is there something they could possibly miss? There's always that chance. But they're certainly at a minimum, they're not going to be restrained by a JCPOA like Obama had done that. But going back to what was achieved, aside from destroying the nuclear program, and on that point, these reports that they've already been set back a little bit, let's set the record straight here. CNN is the only organization that reported that. It was reported based on a story from a woman by the name of Natasha Bertrand, who was also responsible for publishing the Steele dossier and talking about how accurate that was. Is also the same woman who reported the 51 intelligence officers that their letter that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation, and the intelligence report that that was leaked that she got her hands on. That was based on what the intelligence community said, quote unquote, low confidence. And yet when CNN ran the story, they forgot to tell that. And then as time has gone on, it's pretty clear Israeli intelligence, American intelligence, even Iranian, and even the Iranians have been forced to admit that their nuclear program has been absolutely decimated. You want to use the word obliterated, decimated, set back decades, whatever it is. This was a hugely and widely successful attack. What it also accomplished, two other very important goals. One is there'll be a lot of dead American soldiers resting a lot easier today, knowing that we have finally retaliated against their murderers. Let's remember the 241 Marines that were blown up in the Marine Baruch Barracks in 1982. Right. 241. Over 20 American service members were killed in the Khobar Towers. There have been countless attacks against our service members in Iraq and Syria directly by the Iranians or their terrorist proxies. This was retaliation for that. We finally fought back. This notion that we're starting a war, this is Trump's war, what a bunch of garbage. These people have been at war with us since 1979. We have just chosen not to fight back. And what have we succeeded at doing? Not starting a war. We have succeeded in almost definitively ending a war. But I think the single most important achievement of Operation Midnight Hammer was that it actually reinvigorated America's essential foreign policy weapon of credible military deterrence. Joe Biden frittered that away with the catastrophic surrender in Afghanistan, and that led directly to the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the October 7th obscenity. These things, if these people feared the United States rather than having contempt for the United States and being convinced the United States would not defend itself or its allies, those things would never have happened. Now, Trump has put that back in place, and people, once again, have to be worried about what the United States will do. It also demonstrated, aside from the fact that Iran is a paper tiger, where were Russia? Where was China? Where was Hezbollah? They were all cowering under their beds. I mean, Russia made some, Putin made some, we're going to give them nuclear weapons. They're not giving them nuclear weapons. They did absolutely nothing. China's being pushed out of the Middle East as opposed to moving deeper and deeper into the Middle East.
Well, they try to make that deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that went nowhere. Obviously, that's going nowhere. But look, go back to when Donald Trump became president, and before October 7th. Assad was in Syria. Iran was ascendant. Those were Russia's two closest allies. Assad's now living in some condo complex in Moscow, and the Ayatollah is still hiding in his bunker, and Iran has been completely neutered. It remains to be seen if this regime can hold on. It is not beyond possibility that the people of Iran will rise up, and hopefully will, and throw these bastards out.
Jesse, let me
make one final point.
Go ahead.
One final point. Let's remember, for all these naysayers and all these critics of Donald Trump setting back the Iranian nuclear program, when Barack Obama became president, under UN resolutions and international law, it was prohibited for Iran to develop and enrich any uranium. It was illegal for them to have a ballistic missile program. The JCPOA gave them a ballistic missile program and a legal path to a nuclear weapon. Let's remember what Barack Obama did. We are now pre-Obama. We have set this back to before Obama became president. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and it cannot have a ballistic missile system, and the United States and Israel will make sure that happens.
I think those are good points. I think the last point, Jesse, then I'll get to you, is fundamentally what Trump has done is he's made major corrections to the Obama and the Biden failures. And that's the way I look at it. But for Donald Trump, we'd be living in a much more dangerous world where we were kowtowing to these extremists, where they were on the move, the momentum was there, and we were doing nothing to address that. Trump has made these major corrections to the Obama and Biden failures, and maybe something good will come out of it. What I want to ask you, Jesse, is what do you think happens next? Does Iran make peace? Does Iran respond down the road militarily through sleeper networks or through their little groupings that they've put throughout the Middle East of these terrorist organizations? Will they use these proxies to retaliate at all? Are they just biding their time until they can make the next move? Jesse, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that all of that has to be on the table. I believe that there is I agree with all the sentiments that you have shared, both you and Eric. As it comes to what Iran is doing right now, Iran is, trying to hold its own country together, I think, right now, based on the fact that the supreme leader came out after days of weeks of hiding, did a pre-recorded message where he basically embarrassed himself and Iran on a world stage, saying that they slapped the face of the United States by going after its base in Qatar, that they've defeated the little evil Satan of Israel, and that the Americans, Satan will not proceed any further because it'll be catastrophic. The world knows that that's all a joke, and this is, I believe, trying to control the narrative on their state-run TV of their own people, because there is a growing group. There is a group there, and I think you and Eric pointed out, of people who don't agree with and want to rise up against the supreme leader. So we'll see how that goes. I think we need, no matter what, this country needs to remain diligent. It needs to remain on a footing of deterrence and defense, because this is a regime that is unpredictable. I do want to go back and touch base on three things. Number one, the operational execution and security of Operation Midnight Hammer. The people on the sidelines that now have their ears have peaked up, and also the assessment of this damage. First, let's give President Trump, and we were debating this last week before Friday came or Saturday came, and
we got it right. And we got it right.
The three of us got it right. Let the record show we got it right. We got it right.
We should be moving forward. But what I loved about this president and this administration is the operational security they took. There was not a breath of this. There was no talk of this. There were no leaks of what was going on here. I appreciate, and this is like something out of a Tom Clancy book, where he used, or the American military used sleight of hand. B-2 bombers flying out to the west, people tracking them, the press tracking them. All the while along, there was this group that had the real package was on his way on almost a 40-hour mission to initiate Midnight Hammer. So I want to credit to the security there. And we all know Iran's response was tepid. It's an embarrassment. They gave them a heads up to Qatar that they were going to take shots at the United States military base. The United States knew ahead of time. It really truly identified them and showed them to be a toothless tiger when it came here. So now, who's also picked? Whose attention has been piqued up? We spoke last week about what's important about taking action outside the Middle East. Who would be impacted by that? Russia and China. They have to wake up. They woke up sometime Saturday night, early morning Sunday, and they said, holy crap. They had a holy crap moment in Beijing and in Moscow that this action was taken decisively and it was executed perfectly. And they understand that this was a mission that was truly not just to eliminate Iran and stabilize the Middle East, to set Iran back, as you guys pointed out, to the pre-Biden and Obama days, that everyone was on notice, America's enemies. China is going to take a look. If the United States and Trump are going to do this in Iran, what's now to prevent them? He does mean business when he says he will defend Taiwan, and again, with Russian incursions in other areas. So that's a benefit to this. We have repositioned America on the world stage as the superpower who will take decisive and deliberate action against tyranny and against America's enemies and against the enemies of our allies. The other thing I want to touch base a bit about is CNN and the bomb assessment. Number one, I agree with you can use any word you want, but when you have respected members of the cabinet like Marco Rubio saying that Iran's nuclear capabilities have been obliterated or eliminated, I trust him. We've had the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Ironically, the day that this is being recorded, him and Secretary Hegseth had a press conference detailing with video the work that was done here and the craters that this were left behind with new intel on the bomb assessment. Also, no friend of ours, no friend of the American people, the American government, no friend of Israel, the United Nations, its Atomic Energy Group Council, they have so many names I don't understand.
The IAEA, the International
sir.
Atomic Energy
They
Association.
came out, begrudgingly or whatnot, and said that this has significantly cratered the Iranian nuclear program. So those are the people that are respected. Now, listen, we go into this this week, and let's not forget that this is members of the deep state. As Eric pointed out, these were parts of a low-level confidence report that came out, and you needed time to assess the damage here. I am proud and I am happy to see that the Attorney General Bondi is going to immediately, with the FBI, investigate and prosecute.
Absolutely.
They must do that.
That is true.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, that is treason. That's the very definition
That
of
is
treason.
And then you have CNN and the New York Times, basically, along with Democrats who are still silent on this action, except to try and go after the President Trump on whether or not he had the legal authority to do so.
Let's single out Chuck
America does
Schumer.
agree that he does have the authority to do that. Let's not forget, in 2016 alone, President Obama dropped 26,000 pounds of bombs in different military actions. And we didn't hear a peep about the War Powers Act. But these Democrats and these media entities like CNN and New York Times, they're cheering against America. They're cheering against the efforts of our troops, those brave airmen and sailors that undertook Operation Midnight Hammer. And they would rather undermine the effectiveness of the American military and the true results of what transpired following that operation, all because they want to take a chunk out of the success of Donald Trump and his presidency. That's wrong. But sir, first and foremost, let's find who issued this leak. Let's prosecute them. If it's a member of Congress from whichever party, they need to go to jail.
Absolutely. There is no immunity for this for anyone. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us. We'll be back in but a few moments with more important and interesting conversation.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.
Meta AI is the personal AI to help you with whatever you need. Plus, it meets you where you are. Not only is Meta AI now an app, but it's also on the apps you already know and love: Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Messenger. Plus the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. It's easy to access wherever you are. So whether you're talking or texting, Meta AI is convenient to use throughout your day. Experience our newest AI that's tailored to you by downloading the Meta AI app. Try the Meta AI app today on the Apple App Store and Google Play.
Imagine this. The best pasta sauce you have ever tasted sits abandoned on a plate. Wasted sauce. That is a tragedy. If only you had used Barilla al Bronzo pasta. Its bronze-cut texture holds your sauce and scoops up every last drop. The Italians call that scarpetta. Capture sauce the Italian way. Barilla al Bronzo. Click or tap the banner to find out more.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the New York State Republican Party and the County Chair of the Suffolk Republican Party. Our co-host, Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist, is also with us. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. I want to switch gears, gentlemen. So we just had a primary in the city of New York. And a young man, a 33-year-old named Zoltan Mamdani.
Zoran
Mamdani. Okay, try to forget that name, because if you remember that name, we're in serious trouble. Why do I say we're in serious trouble? I'm still the House Democrat, and every day it becomes
and nobody believes that.
And nobody believes
okay.
it. But it becomes harder and harder every day to have any faith or confidence and belief in the Democratic Party as it's constituted. The momentum seems to be for the crazy, radical left. These are not just people who are liberal. These are people who are fundamentally anti-American, have a socialist bent, have an anti-Israel bent, and an anti-Semitic bent. These are dangerous people. And so what happened in this primary? So this young man, a trust fund baby, his mother is a billionaire, a filmmaker. His father is a acknowledged anti-Semite, anti-Zionist professor. This young man who believes in intifada. Now, intifada is violent response.
Globalize the intifada.
Right. Now, let's understand this, gentlemen. Intifada isn't peaceful demonstrations in the First Amendment sense. It is violent attacks against people you perceive to be your political or social or ideological enemies. They blow up school buses. They attack schools. They seize airplanes. They shoot up airports. They do whatever they want. You're standing waiting for a bus. They drive a car into you. They have suicide bombers. That is intifada. And this clown, this 33-year-old clown, who's never worked a real day in his life, is portraying himself as the voice of the working people. And he wins the nomination, and he drives Andrew Cuomo into political oblivion. Now, New York City has one choice, and one choice only: to stop this Islamist, anti-Semitic, anti-law and order, anti-public safety, socialist into political oblivion as well. He has to be stopped. Now, why? Let me tell you a few things that he believes in. He believes in freezing rents. Well, that's great. When you freeze rents, what happens? Landlords can't afford to maintain their properties, so they'll abandon their properties. In New York City, for example, right now, you have over 100,000 apartments that are being warehoused. They're not being rented to anybody. Why? Because they can't afford to rehab them, maintain them, pay for the staff. If you know your history, there was something called Bronx burning, where people were abandoning their buildings, and they were suspicious apartment fire buildings to get money out because people couldn't maintain the buildings. That's what rent stabilization and rent control gets you. And if you're going to mandate no increases at all, you'll have no housing. You're going to have people fleeing the city of New York. The real estate industry, which provides for the housing, they'll flee. They won't invest here. They won't build. They won't maintain their properties. There will be no housing. What does he want to do? He wants to give free bus rides. That's swell. So who's going to pay for that? You're going to have increased taxes to pay for free bus rides. What else is he for? He's for defunding the police. Now, let me ask you, how does that work out, defunding the police? What else is he for? He's for no cooperation with ICE. So you're going to be overrun by illegal migrants with questionable backgrounds who have not been vetted, who are a threat. They've already picked up at least 130 Iranians who should not be here illegally, who are a threat to the homeland, just in the last couple of days. Now, the dirty little secret is that the NYPD has a very good intelligence system, and it works hand in glove with our federal forces as well as international forces. He has a right, as the mayor, to tell the police department to stand down. If there are riots and demonstrations, he can say, stand down, don't go in there. You have a riot in a Jewish neighborhood or an Italian neighborhood or an Irish neighborhood, You don't want to do it because you don't think they're woke enough or they're worthy of your protection? Right away, you'll tell the cops to stand down. He will not cooperate with ICE. He'll tell them to stand down, and he'll pull back all cooperation with federal and international anti-terrorist authorities. This is dangerous stuff. He wants to raise taxes on the so-called millionaires and billionaires. Let me give you this statistic. 48% of the income tax in the city of New York is paid by 6,000 individuals. Those people can pick themselves up and leave. And so where's your tax base? Who provide the jobs and the services? Who will support the charities and the cultural institutions and the hospitals? He wants to raise the minimum wage to $30 an hour. How can you sustain a retail business, a small business, at $30 an hour? You can't. He is naive. He is dangerous. As Eric Adams is correctly pointing out, he is a snake oil salesman. This is the lesson that must be learned. When you forget the lesson of history, socialism has always failed, always will. When you don't protect and defend the city of New York and you make it uninhabitable, people will flee. We need to get back to basics. The basic is send this young man to political oblivion, protect and defend the city of New York. Eric.
Yeah, as we have learned from past mayors, who the mayor is really impacts the quality of life in New York. David Dinkins was a very decent man, and he was a centrist, but he was an incompetent. So New York paid the price dearly for that. Bill de Blasio may have been well-intentioned, but he was a socialist and also incompetent. He succeeded in reversing 20 years of progress and growth under the Giuliani and Bloomberg administrations. So who the mayor is really matters. The city is now faced with the prospect, as Richard has pointed out, that it could elect an unqualified, malevolent, Jew-hating communist as a mayor. Zohran Mamdani will destroy New York. You talked, Richard, about he wants to defund the police. He has the power to appoint the police commissioner.
Of course.
Yeah. So he can appoint someone who doesn't believe in policing. He actually is on record, Mamdani is, as saying that the police department is a force for evil. So if you couple a neutered New York police department with a pro-criminal district attorney in Alvin Bragg, who just won, the primary again, what do you think that says for crime in New York? It'll be unbridled. New York will be absolutely unlivable. Another one of the brilliant policies he wants to bring here is to have government-run supermarkets. Well, goodbye bodega owners. I mean, maybe Big Apple or Gristedes or some of the largest supermarket chains can survive, but local bodega owners, they're out of business. There's no way they can compete because the city will just undercut them in the price, and then you're going to have empty shelves, and then you're going to have a food crisis. Look, communism and socialism failed in the Soviet Union. It failed in Cuba. It failed in Venezuela. It fails in North Korea. Why do we want to bring it to New York? But that is what this guy is promising. And you talk about anti-Semitism, this is not some ordinary anti-Semite. He is a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization outlawed in Arab countries, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, because it calls for the radical and violent overthrow of these governments. And it wants to impose Sharia law. It is the political basis and ideology of Hamas. And I'm not making this stuff up. This isn't supposition. When Zohran Mamdani was a student at Bowdoin College, he founded the chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine. It is a pro-Hamas, pro-Muslim Brotherhood, violent organization. It is so violent, in fact, that Columbia University, of all places, on its own, threw them off campus. Now, you got to go some to get Columbia University to find you too anti-Semitic. But that's who this guy is. He's on the record as saying that the Jewish state of Israel has no right to exist. He believes that October 7th was a justified uprising. And he wants to globalize, quote, he wants to globalize the Intifada, unquote, which calls, as Richard pointed out, for the extermination of the Jewish people. That's what it means today. Now he falls back on, no, that isn't what I mean. It really means this or that or the other. Look, enemies of Israel and anti-Semites employ this strategy. They use words that they like to have a variety of meanings for, so that depending upon what group they're talking to, they could say, well, no, it really means this or it really means that. The students at Columbia and the protesters at Columbia and the administrators at Columbia and the faculty at Columbia, when they say globalized intifada, they're talking about killing Jews. And when they talk about the intifada in Gaza, they're talking about killing Jews. And that's what Mamdani is sympathetic towards. Will he go out and kill a Jew? I doubt it. But he certainly supports those that do. So it's not enough to say that Mamdani can't win. We need to say, how do we stop him? And we can only stop him if we have a one-on-one election. We cannot have an election where Mamdani is the Democratic nominee, Curtis Lee was the Republican nominee, Eric Adams is on one independent line, Andrew Cuomo's on another independent line, and then there's this fifth guy whose name I always forget.
Jim Walden.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, we should listen. Let's be very, very clear. If we're going to have a chance to save this city,
we need
one-on-one.
Right, and there's only one viable choice, and that's Mayor Adams.
That's exactly right.
That's all we have.
Everyone, if they love this city, if they care about this city, everybody else should be off the ballot. And if they can't get off the ballot legally, they should be endorsing Mayor Adams for re-election.
100%. Look, today we are not Republicans, we are not Democrats, we are not independents, we are New Yorkers. And as New Yorkers, we need to save our city. And Eric Adams is the only one that can beat Mamdani one-on-one. And we need to encourage Curtis Lee, who's a wonderful human being and a great guy.
And a good friend.
And a good friend to get out of the race. Republicans have a role in trying to explain to him that he needs to get out of the race. And we need all to get behind Eric Adams. If we don't do that, Mamdani is going to win. Just picture this.
Choice Hotels get you more for your money so you can maximize any road trip. Let's get real close to hear the maximum sizzle of Comfort Inn's free hot breakfast. Maximized. Check into more. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Shopping is hard.
I can never find anything in my size.
I don't even know my size.
I buy my clothes the same place I buy my groceries.
There's a better way. Make it easy with Stitch Fix. Just share your size, style, budget, and done. Your personal stylist sends pieces picked just for you.
That was easy.
Stitch Fix. Online personal styling for everyone. Free shipping and returns. No subscription required. Get started today at StitchFix.com.
Your burger is served. And this is our finest Pepsi Zero Sugar. Its sweet profile perfectly balances the savory notes of your burger.
That is one perfect combination. Burgers deserve Pepsi.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. How can you free up your team from time-consuming office tasks? Amazon Business empowers leaders to not only streamline purchasing, but better support their teams so they can focus on strategy and growth. Free up your teams and focus on your future. Learn more about the technology, insights, and support available at amazonbusiness.com.
Staten Island Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, the three leading Republican potential candidates for governor in alphabetical order, no endorsements here, Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman, Congressman Mike Lawler, and Chairwoman of the House Leadership Elise Stefanik get into a group photo with Eric Adams and endorse him. District leaders, Republican district leaders from around the city get together with Eric Adams and endorse him. Rabbis, priests, ministers, and other religious leaders get into a picture with Eric Adams, and if you can't endorse him because you're worried about your tax treatment, just tell them hate has no place and we love Eric Adams. People will get the message. Leaders of the Jewish, Black, Hispanic, and Asian communities need to come together and endorse Eric Adams. Other people of goodwill need to get together and endorse Eric Adams. Business leaders must come together and explain why that if Zohran Mamdani wins, businesses are going to leave New York and it's going to take jobs with them and the tax base is going to be eroded. In the 1960s, when Detroit wasn't faced with the exact same situation, but when it was a city on the abyss, don't think that people don't leave. 50% of Detroit's tax base left. The city has absolutely never recovered.
They've knocked down buildings. Well, half the city has been bulldozed.
So
physically bulldozed.
There's an organization of bodega owners, the exact name I don't recall right now, but they need to get together and they need to explain why if Zohran Mamdani becomes mayor, they're out of business, destroying their communities. You know, the New York City Police Union, they have a role here. Endorse Eric Adams. There's a wonderful police commissioner. Explain why Mamdani will make the city unlivable. People who, landlords and tenants together need to get together and explain how he will destroy the housing market in New York. I mean, this guy may succeed in unifying the city, but the only thing we're going to be able to unify around is defeating him. I just say it again. We are not Republicans. We are not Democrats. We are not independents. We are New Yorkers, and we need to save our city.
Jesse, your turn.
Yeah, before I get into Mamdani, I just need to ask this question. How do you think Andrew Cuomo feels today? I mean, is he walking around his high-rise, high-cost apartment in a robe, wondering what the hell went wrong? He spent $30 to $50 million on this. He had another super PAC going. He had every endorsement going on, and he loses by 9 points to a 33-year-old who just got into electoral scene in 2021. I mean, talk about a fall from grace. I thought a fall from grace was resigning from governor. I guess this is even a closer bottom.
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy, though.
It couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Look, I don't know. I don't want to subscribe to that, but I will say this. He tried for redemption, political and personal. He's failed. If he loves this city, he'll do the right thing and he'll back Eric Adams. He'll get out.
Well, he's already dropped out of the race.
Well,
his sources in his camp have already said that he's dropped out of the race. And before I don't know the mechanisms of how to have someone drop out of a race, come off the line, because even with all the endorsements and such as that, a Republican may have to appear on the line, because I don't believe that any of the candidates are lawyers. I mean, the Republican candidate, I don't believe Curtis Sliwa is a lawyer. I don't believe he's a judgeship that he can be nominated for to clear the line and such.
And we're not asking him to. There are three ways to do it, Jesse. You can die, you can move out of the state, or you can be nominated for the judgeship. I'm not asking him to die because he's a friend and I'm very fond of him.
You have to be a.
We all like Curtis.
We all like Curtis. He's not going to be a judge because he's not a lawyer, and he has to be a lawyer for at least 10 years. So there's always Jersey City. Just
exactly.
Just get a ferry boat across.
Yeah, that's cruel and unusual. So you don't want to go down that road. But Jesse, you make a great point about Cuomo. But here's really the thing about the guy. People remember who he was or is. He's responsible for more COVID deaths than anyone in the world after the Chinese Communist Party.
I don't know if the redemption. Maybe he went for redemption, but here's the thing with Cuomo too, and is he ran his campaign the way he ran his gubernatorial status, his gubernatorial administration, far away from the people, everything controlled. You couldn't. He did no retail politicking. Everything was stagnant because he was, in his mind, anointed. I feel horrible for his father, who's probably turning over in his grave right now, that what his son has done to the legacy of the Cuomo name from Queens here in New York. He has completely, to use a word that we've heard before this week, obliterated the Cuomo legacy that dates back to his father and his family before it. But in terms of this, of Mamdani, I don't understand what the people of New York City are thinking or doing. I mean, this is a grim sign for the Democrats. I mean, as you point out, he's spoken out about global intifada. He talked about defunding the police, proposing free services that no one will be here to pay for. And that's not just me. I mean, this is an anti-Semite communist who is now the standard bearer of all Democrats in the state of New York, not just the city of New York.
And by the way, he may be the reason, if this is handled properly, that the Democratic Party may die or be reconstituted and get some common sense again.
Well, look how the Democratic Party is responding to his winning.
They're embracing him.
Bill Clinton has endorsed him. Chuck Schumer, the execrable Chuck Schumer, one of the lowest forms of life on the planet, along with Hakeem Jeffries, have invited him to Washington to meet with him. And there's absolutely no one speaking out against him in the Democratic Party. The guy's being embraced. I mean, what does this say about the Democrats?
Exactly. There are some Democrats that are trying to walk away from him here locally and whatnot. Members of Congress from Nassau County. That's not going to work. You can't speak out against somebody when you didn't speak up ahead of that from going on and him being elected. You know, and these are the words of not myself or other Republicans. These are the words of Carville, the Democratic strategist for Bill Clinton, who must be wondering what the hell his former client is thinking about by endorsing Ambani. It's completely unbelievable. I mean, this is an individual that, number one, one of his first surrogates that came out to defend him was Bill de Blasio. And he's left of Bill de Blasio, and we know what happened to the city then. He's left, and worse, his policies are worse than those of the city of San Francisco right now and Chicago. And all we have to do is look to London. Some of the same policies were there, and what do we see? We have an unreliable mass transportation system. We have crime running out of control. There's more gang violence. There's more major crime, major violence in our streets.
Anti-Semitism is at an all-time high.
Anti-Semitism is at an all-time high. And the housing, we want to make it affordable for everybody. We want to give free stuff to people that no one is going to be able to be here to afford to pay. And what's happening? It's still high. This is an utter and complete failure and mistake by the people of the city of New York. And, you know, sure, it's only Democrats, but there's 8 million Democrats that could have voted in this primary. And where the hell were they? I mean,
well, it doesn't help when Chuck Schumer remains silent. This guy has completely betrayed the Jewish people, Jewish Americans.
But isn't that been the case with Chuck Schumer for the last 3 years?
Yeah, well, no, going back to the JCPOA, that's the latest that started. Going back to the Iran nuclear deal, that's when this guy demonstrated who the hell he is. He's only about Chuck Schumer. He doesn't give a damn about his fellow Jews. Doesn't give a damn about Israel. He's all about himself.
And a crazy, radical, anti-Semitic leftist going to cut his throat next year anyway.
Well,
so much for that.
I place this condition on the feet of Chuck Schumer.
100%.
Specifically, first and foremost, and Hakeem Jeffries, his junior lieutenant in this game, because as you said, they didn't speak out ahead of time. They didn't even come out and endorse Cuomo because there were tweaks in between. You're right. Chuck Schumer with the JCPOA, that's when he cashed in his principles and ideals and the protection of his people and the Jewish people for political expediency, power, greed, and influence. That's the day it happened.
Well,
and it has been worse since that point forward.
I have to take a break. I have a signal from Rich in the control room. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Stay with us. We'll be back for a final segment of today's show with more interesting and important conversation. Please stay tuned.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
In golf, precision is everything, on and off the course. PGA of America chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business for smooth operations and seamless transactions. Together, we enhance ticketing and concessions for better fan experiences from gate to green. This is pro-level efficiency. This is PGA of America with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Hi, welcome to IKEA.
This is my college campus.
Correct, but I see you're on IKEA.com ordering some college items.
My daughter's room is pretty bare. We need a lamp, some comfy pillows, her favorite stuffy.
Dad! With pickup options, we've got what you need to conveniently order IKEA. Literally anywhere.
Sweet, more time for gaming.
And studying. Wait, where are you going now?
Got to show the ultimate Frisbee team how easy it is to order from IKEA. Get IKEA whenever, wherever, however you want. Choose from thousands of pickup locations, affordable delivery options, and more.
When you're separating from the military, no one tells you how hard it can be to get your civilian life up to speed. But with VA benefits, It doesn't have to be. From the VA home loan requiring no down payment, to the GI Bill covering tuition, books, and cost of living, to VA healthcare offering top-ranked, low-cost care designed specifically for veterans. All the support you need is at VA. I'm here telling every veteran because I wish someone had told me. Get what you earned. Visit choose.va.gov.
Not all veterans are eligible for the type or amount of benefits mentioned here. I already love same-day delivery with Shipt, but it's so much better since I signed up for Target Circle 360. Why? Because I no longer pay price markups from the majority of stores through Shipt. Only a handful of alcohol retailers and items don't count. That means no markups on groceries, pet food, even home goods and makeup. So to recap, I have more time to catch up on life while someone shops for me, and I spend less. It's a win-win. Order now at shipt.com/360. Terms apply.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. So we talked about Iran, and we've talked about the mayor election in New York City. Now let's focus our attention on Washington. So what's going on in Washington, gentlemen? Well, Trump has his big, beautiful bill, and it's being considered by the United States Senate. The House has already passed their bill. The way this deal works is the Senate has to pass its bill. It has to be in the same form and substance. Every paragraph has to be the same. Every period has to be the same. Every word has to be the same. Every substantive detail has to be the same. They have to approve a bill that both sides agree to. And if there's a difference between what was passed by the House and what was passed by the United States Senate, they go into a conference committee and they work out the details. And then when they finally agree, they each vote the same exact bill, and it goes to the president for his consideration. Now, what's going on in Washington? Right now, they're going through a process which is known, the technical process called reconciliation. Fundamentally, what that means is you can avoid a filibuster if you go through this process, and you can pass,
which requires 60 votes.
A filibuster requires 60 votes to break the deadlock and move forward, to get what they call cloture.
Exactly.
Okay, but with reconciliation, you can avoid that. And you can do everything you want with a majority
in the Senate.
That's the Senate.
Yes.
Now, the problem is with reconciliation, there are only a limited number of things you can do. Everything has to be related to taxes and revenue.
It's called the Byrd Rule.
Right. It's not about changing public policy. There has to be a real fiscal impact.
Correct.
Now, the person who has the first voice on whether these bills are fiscal impact bills is a parliamentarian of the United States Senate. And this lady, whose name I don't know, has an enormous role in this, and she's ruling out different pieces of the bill that was passed by the House. Now, if the Senate majority wants to override her opinion, they have the right under the Senate rules to override her and do what they want to do.
By a simple majority.
By a simple majority. So that's the process we're going through, literally, as Jesse and Eric and I are talking. So, Eric, we have a few minutes. Jesse, we have a few minutes. What do you gentlemen think about this? Eric?
Well, first of all, her name is Elizabeth McDonough. So that's the parliamentarian. So it's not so simple that the Senate can just say, well, we'll override her and we'll have a majority and just nullify what she said. As John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, has pointed out, if you do that, then you run the risk of eviscerating the Byrd Rule. And if you eviscerate the Byrd Rule and you're voting on things by a simple majority, then you run the risk of doing away with the filibuster, which I think time has proven is critical to the operation of the Senate. It prevents crazy things, really crazy things, from happening.
Excellent point.
So it is an affirmative good to maintain the filibuster, in my view, and to override the parliamentarian, you run the risk of that. So what did she just recently do, though? I think she did it either yesterday or early this morning. She ruled that many of the Medicaid cuts, but they're not really cuts, but did not satisfy the Byrd Rule. One of the points that the Senate Republicans were making was that we're not cutting Medicaid for anybody. What we're doing is we're putting in place a work requirement for able-bodied men without children. And what could be wrong with wanting to make sure that people aren't getting just government money for nothing? You should go out and you should work, a perfectly legitimate argument. The problem was the argument was so sane, so rational, so correct. The parliamentarian concluded, well, what you're telling me is this isn't fiscal. This is just policy. Now, I could disagree with her, but that's the conclusion she reached. Now, why is this so serious? This is so serious because the majority of the savings, of the cuts to the budget, was in the Medicaid reform. And if you remove the Medicaid reform that the Senate and the House had put in place, you lose much of the cuts. And that makes the bill that much more expensive. It complicates dramatically the ability to pass the big, beautiful bill. So the Republicans are now faced with the dilemma of overriding the parliamentarian, which, as we just discussed, may not be such a simple thing to do or a wise thing to do, with having now to go out and find other areas within the budget to cut. But there was something like $2 trillion or $1 trillion that they were looking to cut there. Now they're going to have to find that somewhere else. That is no easy task. So this really throws a spanner in the works.
Jesse, I'm going to turn to you in a second. I just want to tell you, we had a lunch yesterday, a Police Athletic League lunch, and Larry Kudlow, a noted economist and leading advisor on economic and financial issues to President Trump during the first term, and who has the award-winning show both on Fox as well as here at WABC. He's very, very hopeful when he spoke yesterday at the luncheon that the bill be passed by July 4th. I'm not so sure now. Jesse, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if the July 4th date was ever going to be met. And I don't know if it was. I don't believe it was a hard, fast rule. But just so people, our listeners, remember, those I've spoken to in the White House, staffers in the Senate, and the members of Congress, predominantly from the New York delegation, have all agreed on one thing: that whatever comes out needs to be very similar to what the House passed, or else it risks losing its support in the House of Representatives and the slight majority that Republicans have there. I know the president's going to weigh in on this because it's important, and there are other provisions here which are not policy. It's simply the reaffirming of regulations, or at least standards that we all have understood and accepted, like eliminating Medicaid eligibility for non-citizen adults and children. The lowered federal medical assistance program, and of course, using the blocking of Medicaid dollars for children's insurance program that would allow for gender transitional Medicare. Those seem issues. I'm not sure what the solution here, but the big matter here is that is that this bill needs to get to the president's desk. And what needs to be done is that the House and the Senate need to come together, the Senate conference, and Thune needs to get his conference together and utilize the House bill as its blueprint and get it to that point, because it'll be game over, regardless of what Donald Trump just did in Iran and the Middle East or what he does anywhere else. It is game over.
Agreed.
For the Trump administration, the economy, the Republicans in the midterm elections.
You're exactly right, Jesse. They have to extend the 2017 tax cuts. Otherwise, you're going to have a $4 trillion tax increase.
Exactly. The tax increase, and also you will have, and listen, we can talk about SALT and all that stuff. The elimination of SALT altogether, you know what the big beneficiaries are? Those Hamptons millionaires here from Suffolk County. That's what it is, where they can write off everything. Not the middle-class Americans that we represent as a Republican Party right now. This is game over, and it'll be properly used by Democrats. And they should use it if we can't get this across.
Yeah, remember when Republicans were talking about...
Republicans cannot govern.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Yeah, remember when Republicans were talking about repealing Obamacare and ripping it up root by root and branch, and then they had nothing to put in its place. Talk about political malpractice. That would be nothing in comparison to this. I mean, and the Republicans paid the price for having no alternative to Obamacare. The price to be paid if they don't get a big beautiful bill passed, we're going to be eviscerated in the House. The Democrats are going to come sweeping back the House, and what we thought is a very safe Senate, albeit a couple races here or there. The Senate will be at risk. The Senate will be at risk.
And then we'll have 2 years of impeachment meetings.
Well, that's the point.
That's what we'll have.
Jesse,
that's
exactly right.
If I can for a moment, I'm not sure. I agree we need to have the Byrd rule there. I understand the need for a Byrd rule, but I also understand politics. I also know how to do the administration of tactics. Here's very simple. Thun's got to get lawyers. And if he needs lawyers, we'll send Eric, we'll send you, Richard, we'll send my lawyers from
I think he started hearing from me, but you never know.
We'll send them down there to appeal with proper paperwork to the parliamentarian so that she can see that she made a mistake and give us a path. Because lawyers, I worked for a supervisor, Felix Gucci. He was the fireworks king of not only the country but the world. And he said, listen, any lawyer can tell me what I can't do. I need a lawyer that tells me how I get from point A to point B to success within the bounds of the law. And that's what the Senate needs to do right now. Get the best talent to appeal this decision.
Well,
or whatever methodology they have.
Well, it's very flattering that you thought about Eric and me, Jesse. Thanks very much.
I was serving you guys up for free, though.
If I had a nickel for everybody that wanted to volunteer me to do work for free, I'd be the richest man in the world.
Well, Jesse and Eric, Rich has given me the sign in between laughing at the last round of conversation we had. This has been Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted commentator and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please come back to us next week for more interesting and important conversation. God bless you. God bless your families. God bless America.
Thanks for listening to Let the Record Show. You can hear Let the Record Show Sunday mornings at 6. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.